So how many of you are new to tarot? Huh. Okay. Well, tarot is different things to different people. I see it as a language of the unconscious. It's a symbolism of the unconscious, and also containing all the lessons that you need to learn in this lifetime. And some cards will keep coming up over and over and over, and will become a red light for you, so that you know. Could you mind moving back a little bit? Yeah. So that you know that that's something, that's some energy or some lesson that you have to pay attention to. I'm going to talk mostly about Daughters of the Moon, and I haven't got these sorted out, but if you'll just bear with me. It is also a dynamic tool for self-growth, and a lot of psychologists that I've known, that have known me, have used my deck as a tool in their therapy, where a client will come in and they'll have them draw a card, and it'll bring up a subject or a part of themselves that they need to work on. And so I am trained as a psychologist. I have a master's degree in psychology, and I have one in women's studies. And so my tarot is women-oriented, and it's also psychological-oriented, as you will notice when you read the book. I am very proud that my deck was one of the first to have mostly goddesses. The Mother Peace deck and mine came out about the same time in the early 80s. Mine came out in 83 or 84, and theirs came out, they went through a mainstream publisher, which I didn't do because, for many reasons. First of all, I wanted to provide a job for myself, because I was living in a rural area, and I was very happy there, and I didn't want to move. And I didn't want to go back into the university system, so it was a way that I could, provide a job for myself and a lot of other people. Now, the cards, somebody asked me today why my name wasn't on the cards. Well, the names on the cards say Daughters of the Moon, 1991, because that's when the color edition was brought out. Before that, it was black and white, and tons of them ended up over in Australia, and people are still emailing me and asking me, where's the black and white deck? Because then you could buy the deck and then you could color it yourself, which is quite an undertaking, I must say. But it's out of print now, and I'm not going to print it again, ever, because it's just too much, for the amount of people that want it. So anyway, my deck was, Mother Peace has quite a few goddess tarot cards in there with names of goddesses, but my deck was the first, and I really I want to take credit for popularizing a lot of the goddesses that are in my cards, because people know about them now and they didn't know about them all of those years. And there's many beautiful goddess decks out now, but I'm very proud that mine was one of the first. I studied almost every tarot deck I could get my hands on for years and years and years while we were creating Daughters of the Moon. And, I didn't finish the other subject. I drew pictures of what I wanted on the card, and they would be rudimentary sketches. And then I got different artists to draw them in black and white. And then I painted them, because I'm a painter. I'm not a graphic artist, I'm a painter. So you might see other people's names on the card somewhere, and those are the women who drew them. And I paid them to draw them. I paid them to draw my ideas, and then I painted them. I experienced, as I was doing the deck, I experienced every single card. And if you read either of these books of mine, one of them especially, Goddess Spirituality book, has, actually the other one does too, because it has this astrological stories. So what I did, I wrote a story for each astrology sign, and I wrote a story for each, for the sacred times of the year, I wrote a story for each of those. There's, in the Wiccan calendar, there's 8 sacred days, and I I don't really practice traditional anything, especially Wicca. I practice women's spirituality and goddess spirituality, and there's a real difference in it, but we won't go into that today because that's a long discussion. So, but especially the death card. The death card was, I had never really been around death very much. I mean, I saw my grandmother in her coffin, which, being old-time Welsh people, my grandparents brought into the house. It terribly frightened me. But I had never really contacted with it. And when I was writing the death card, I saw a young girl of about 5 years old being killed right in front of me. It was an accident, but I happened to be there. And it was like I was concentrating so hard on that card that I felt like that lesson had come to me so that I could, really truly understand what I was writing about. So when you're creating a tarot deck, a lot of times you live the cards, and it's not always wonderful. Sometimes it's very hard. But each of the cards has such a lesson to give, and each of them, even if it's considered a negative card, it has a positive side to it. Just like any other thing in life, you can always find the jewels underneath the hard stuff, or the stuff that's being difficult for you in your life. So why did I do a deck that was a woman-centered deck? Well, I was in a group of women, a spiritual group of women, and that's where it started. And we looked at all the tarot decks, and we said, these are mostly for men. And of course, I was a crazed feminist at that period of time, and I guess I still am in a way. Although I have done another deck that I don't know if will ever come to publication because I don't know what's going to happen to it. But it is more traditionally oriented. It has 4 court cards, not named the king, the queen, the knight, and the page, but it has 4 court cards instead of 3, which is one of the changes in Daughters of the Moon, and I'll get to that. We decided that a lot of the power figures in the major arcana, especially, which is mostly what I'm going to be talking about today, were male figures. And so we decided that we wanted to have a deck that was mostly for women, that women could really relate to, because we didn't see ourselves in there as much as powerful women. We looked at the cards, and a lot of the women looked really weak. And they weren't the ones, riding the horses and, wielding the swords and, doing the things that are traditionally meant for men to do. And so we wanted to, along with our change of consciousness as feminists, we wanted to change the tarot. And so we did. And I worked in a collective for 6 or 7 years with, it started out to be 3 or 4, and it ended up to be 2 of us. And we worked on it, the 2 of us worked on it actually for 8 years, and the tarot deck was going to be called the Matriarchal Tarot. And it was all about women and matriarchy. But we parted our ways, and I won't go into why, but we parted our ways because we had different ideas of how we wanted to do it. And so I came up with a system of tarot that went, except for 6 cards, go directly back to the old Waite deck. Only they have different interpretations, and they're goddesses. They're still the same energy, because I have a Capricorn moon, and I didn't want to change. Capricorns are very into tradition. And so all the rest of my astrology chart is just out there. It's not traditional at all. But there was a part of me that really wanted to keep the tradition of the tarot going. And I sacrificed some things that I have put back into the deck that I want to publish again, my new deck that I want to publish someday. And I don't know if it will be or not. But at that time, when this was done in the early 80s, that's what I wanted to do. And I do think it has sold since 1983, or 84. This deck has sold on the market. Now, it doesn't sell as much in Australia yet because people don't know about it. And it's sold all over the United States. At one point, it was selling like crazy. I mean, just everywhere. And with the book business going the way it has, a lot of the small bookstores have gone out of business. The gay and lesbian bookstores, the metaphysical bookstores, all of the bookstores that used to carry my deck no longer exist. The feminist bookstores, I mean, all around Australia, my friends here tells me that there used to be feminist bookstores everywhere, and now there's hardly anything. And so you've got Barnes and Nobles and the big Borders bookstores, and they don't really care. So that's why people who are small publishers are put out decks that are, you know, not so well known, are now even having a harder time with getting their things out on the market. Okay, so as feminists, we were very frustrated with the traditional decks because they didn't reflect our reality. And the artwork in these decks portrayed men as strong and women as weak, and they really fit into all the sex role stereotypes. So we said, okay, out the window. Gone with you. We want something new. We want something different. And I do have a love and a connection with the traditional tarot, but we are living in 2005. There aren't hardly any kings, queens, knights, and pages around. And so one of the changes that we made was in the shape of the cards. And I want to read something before I finish this section, beginning section. Number 10, second paragraph. I see Daughters of the Moon as a tarot of the feminaries, a term used by Monique Wittig to describe the archives or records of woman lore and knowledge. Ancients kept records of their cultures by chanting songs and telling stories by the fire, as well as with art, sculpture, and carvings on cave walls, just to name a few. Daughters of the Moon has reclaimed goddess lore, dreams, memories, and hidden women's history. I offer her as a living, changing body of wisdom and a record of woman lore and magic and knowledge. So the shape was changed so that we felt like it was more holistic to have round cards because of the fact that in the traditional decks that are rectangular, you have one or the other. There is no in between. There's no shades of gray. So if you have a reversal, you have it all the way. There's no way to, make it anything else. So with round cards, they can come up part of the way, and you can interpret the reversal as partly that energy. And I see reversals. I don't know what you see them as. Everybody sees them as differently, but I see them as blockages to the energy. So this is the energy of creation and the gift of creation, so it's a 1. And if it's part of the way, just tilt it a little bit, means you've got a little bit of a blockage there. But if it's tilted all the way this way, upside down, like a total reversal with a rectangular deck would be, it would mean there's a big blockage there, or whatever you consider your reversals. I think that's the simplest and easiest thing for me to think of a reversal. And I always say to my clients, okay, so you've got a blockage there, now you know what it is, and you know that you've got to work on turning it around so that you can get that energy out there, but the energy is there, and it's there to work with. Okay, and also at the time we talked a lot about hierarchy, and the hierarchy of a civilization, and the hierarchy of our culture, and just the hierarchy that exists between human beings, and how we didn't like that. We didn't like the hierarchies of one person over another, and thinking that this person thinks they're better than this person, thinks they're better than this person, and then the world runs that way, and so we can't have a total acceptance of each other and live in a world where everybody is accepting of everyone else. So we saw the way to change the hierarchy is to have a round card, so that it's not this or that, but then there's all the stages in between too. So swear cards keep us separated. With cycles and circles, we are connected. So we're connected when we're in a circle, like we all were. We're in a circle and we're connected. But when you've got the square cards, you're in a square situation. You're in a hierarchical situation of either or. Okay. Along with this, we felt that the king, the queen, the knight, and the page were very hierarchical in nature. There's the king on top, and then there's the queen, and then there's the knight, and then there's the page. And mostly there's the queen in there is pretty much the only real female archetype. The other three are almost always portrayed as men or young boys. And the knights are out with their swords on their horses, and the pages are usually young men. So we changed it, or I changed it, to the maiden, the mother, and the crone, which are the three stages of women. Is the maiden, or the young person, the seeker, the one out going on the journey and looking for what their life is going to be about. And then the mother, which is the middle part of life, and then the crone, which is the wise old people. So in my deck, the crones have all the answers. They have the knowledge of that particular suit. So if it's a cup suit, then the cups mean emotions. So the crone of cups would have, the knowledge of how to live emotionally in the world, how to deal with emotions, how to be emotional or not be emotional, when to hold it, when to let it go. And the mother is the one that's kind of gotten into the middle section here of learning about what it's like to raise children, whether it be a creation. The children in my children can either be creations or they can be babies. But what if you're a woman that doesn't want to have a child? Does that mean that you don't go through the mother stage? No, that just means that you have other things that you mother. You might mother your friends, you might mother someone else's children, or you might mother these huge projects. Like you're mothering right now, huge projects that you have going on in your life to create, things for yourself and for the world. So that's what the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And also in the women's spirituality tradition, those archetypes are also present. Like I said, in my new deck, I'm going to have 4, and a lot of the people are going to be androgynous, so you don't know if they're men or women. And it's going to even be more of a deck of the future, I think, than this one. The major arcana, named major. We didn't like that hierarchy either, the major, But then later on, I got to realize those are the major lessons of life. Hey, but we wanted to rename it something else. So we named it the spirit suit. So there's air, earth, water, fire, and spirit. And that correlates, the air, earth, water, fire correlates with astrology. And that's why my maiden, mother, and the crone each have, there's 12 of them, and each one of them has an astrological symbol that goes with it. And you'd be surprised how quickly this system just fell into place. The maiden, mother, crone of cups, the maiden, mother, crone of flames, the maiden, mother, crone of the minor suits, and of course the maiden, mother, crone are embodied in the major arcana, which is 22 cards. So that took care of calling it the ether suit, calling it the spirit suit, because it is the spirit suit. It's this suit of the major lessons of life, which are more spiritual lessons, I believe. And then the maiden, mother, the crone of these suits replace the court cards. All right. The blade suit. Okay, why did we name it blades instead of swords? Because we felt like that there were a lot of different cutting instruments rather than knives. And that the air suit, which is blades or swords, was also about communication and was also about things that go through the air, like flying creatures like the birds and dragons and different things that I put in my deck. It's because originally the 4 elements in tarot and the 4 elements in astrology and the 4 elements in the pagan religion all correlated with each other. Now there's 5 in the tarot with what we've done, but then also the pagan goddesses, rituals and things, we always, when we address the 4 directions, we also address the center. So that's the 5th element also. Is everybody understanding, or am I making sense? Okay. So within the sword suit, there's sickles, labrysses, knives, wings, and things moving through the air, and other cutting air symbols. Now, another thing that's associated with air is communication and speech. And the tongue, the cutting edge of the tongue, is thought of as an air element thing. So I put all of these things, every air element thing that I could think of, I put in. And also, I took out all of what I consider pretty dastardly things that were in the air suit. I mean, if I was in air suit looking at some of the traditional air cards, my gosh, you know, people tied up, stabbed with swords. I mean, why do we have to have all that violence? That's why we did these decks, because there's no violence in these. Because I believe if you put violence in your brain, that violence will come out, and that you will be affected by that violence in some way or another. And the tarot was very sacred to me, and I didn't want, I think Crowley's was the worst. Even though the drawings are beautiful, I felt like there's so much violence in that deck. And it's violence that we look at and we say, oh, that's the tarot. Yeah, well, they're cutting each other up, they're binding each other up, they're doing all of this. Why do we need that? So we question that. I'm not saying that you who use traditional decks, I just want to, are doing something wrong. You're not. But I'm just saying that there is another way to look at it, and that's the way we looked at it. We looked at it in a non-violent manner. And I believe that the Mother Peace deck is also non-violent. And many of the New Age decks that are coming out now are non-violent. People aren't being tied up, people aren't being sliced apart, people aren't, you know, and I get excited about it because I'm passionate about it, and that's why I wanted Daughters of the Moon. And I still feel as strong about it because I feel like I'm a non-violent person. And I know that people don't even think about those things, but I just think that it's up to me to go around and maybe just say, well, just look at it, just look at it. Look at the cards you're using, and look and see how much violence is in them. From a real, you know, try to stand back from them. Okay, so I have distributed the negative, tumultuous energies that I thought were overloaded in the air suit or the sword suit, and put the 5s, which is the unstable number. I put all the 5s as natural disasters, the volcano, the storm at sea, and it all goes along with if it's the cups or the pentacles or whatever it is. So every 5 card is a natural uprising of the earth or the water or the wind, and it contains the so-called the negativity of that suit. All right. Troubled energy, so that's what I like to call the 5s. The 5s are troubled energy. And dealing, and you know, your job is to deal with that troubled energy. When you get that card, you're dealing with that troubled energy. Or maybe you feel that way inside. Or maybe you feel like a volcano is happening in your life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, well, like the 5 of Pentacles. Whenever I read the 5 of Pentacles, right away I say to the person, be careful that you lock your house for the next 6 weeks. Be careful of your money, because this is troubled energy, and usually what this card means is that you're going to have to deal with, you know, maybe something being stolen from you, or maybe somebody breaking into your house. And I think that a lot of them come as warnings that you can pass on to your clients too. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's happening now or it's already happened, but it depends, of course, what position it's in. It could be in the past. Or I'll say, were you robbed in the last year? Oh, yeah, I was robbed like 3 or 4 months ago, when the card's in the past. So, and if it's right in the present, you can ask them, has this happened? If it hasn't happened, take heed right away. So in that way, you can deal with those kind of interpretations. Okay, the flames. We changed the flames. Changed it to changed it from wands to flames. Now, because I wanted to stick so closely to the elemental things, so if it's fire, it's fire. Why would you have it a bud happening on a stick? Well, yeah, that's creation, that's creativity, that's what taking action and creativity are what fire suit's about. But you can have creativity with a burning fire, or a fire in a cauldron, or a fire in a hearth, and I love fire so much. And by the way, we came close to having a big-time fire with those candles today. So, how many fire signs are here anyway? Quite a few, yeah. Fire signs. The fires were burning bright when I went back there, and I had to separate some of the candles because they'd all gone together. I was afraid we would have one. So anyway, I guess I just did it because, well, I love the colors of the fire. So every single card of mine has fire in it of some kind. Some are bigger than others. Do any of you get the Wee Moon calendar? Anyway, this card is going to be in there next year. So they're all flames. And it's very obvious, that it's the fire suit. And those of you who have studied tarot a while, you'll know that it's replacing wands. But a lot of the wands were beating other people with those sticks too, and I didn't like that either. So I felt like, okay, we've got the energies here. I just wanted to express them in a different way. So that was changed, and they're all called flames. The cups, can't change the cups. Why bother? The cups are cups, and the pentacles are pentacles, and they mean the same in astrology, and they mean the same in paganism, and they mean the same in tarot. And I didn't see any reason to change them. And everybody knows what they are, right? The cups are all the emotional world, and the pentacles are earth, money, body. So once you get to know the elements, and then you've got a deck that has the elements pretty clearly, then you can easily interpret things just by remembering a few words instead of having to memorize a whole bunch of stuff when you're first learning tarot. Okay, any questions? And I'll just keep going on. Okay, feminization of the tarot, incorporating feminist ideals. Reverence for the female was one of our very first priorities. And we also found that women needed powerful role models that the traditional tarot did not provide. Just didn't provide it for women. I mean, like I said, a lot of the women looked very weak, were pregnant or weak, or not really out there in the way that women of this millennium are. And that doesn't mean you look that way, but when we went around today, I could just see the power and strength in every one of you. And not one person was shy about getting out there and saying, I am so-and-so, I'm powerful women. We are changing society. We really are, all of us. The change happens in the world. I do believe it's going to come from powerful women. And we needed a tarot to reflect our power and our grace and our beauty within that power and not be put down for it. So this is for you, all of you, and me, and all of us who wanted that and who are ready for that. And I felt like the world was ready for it. And when I had a good 3 of my distributors have gone out of business in the last year. Book People, which was one of the biggest distributors in the world, went out of business because it was a collective and they couldn't make enough money. And so, but Daughters of the Moon had its day. Luckily, when I was making lots of money, I put some of it away so that I don't have to be poor now. Because with my business going down the way it has, I'm living on a lot less than I used to, but I don't need things like I used to. You know, I just pretty much have everything I need in the world, no matter where I go. I consider myself that. Somebody got the Traveler. Yeah, I'm a traveler too, and I feel like I can go to Canada, where I'm from. By the way, I'm Canadian. I can go there and I can make a home in probably a month. You know, and I came to Australia with 2 suitcases, and now I have a house full of stuff. So it's not like, you know, you need to drag around all of your physical things. The mysteries, the major arcana, we've already talked about that, and they're the mysteries, and that they resonate deep in our psyches. When you look at the cards, when you look at the priestess card, you look at the high priestess card, you look at the magician card, or I call her the witch. You look at the magician card, you look at, you just can feel that these are archetypes that vibrate in our psyches, that are there from a long, long time ago. So, and I guess most of you know, and some of you don't, that to learn the lessons of the major arcana or the ether suit, it's portrayed by the journey of the self, or the journey of what they call the Fool. And I call that card the Dreamer. This is my Fool card. And I have an archetype of Pan, who is sort of like the Fool anyway. But this is a woman getting up at sunrise, and she's going on like a vision quest. And how I interpret this card, I've added things. And what I'm going to tell you is mostly what I've added as interpretations to the major arcana in the time that we have left. This card is about getting up in the morning, getting her horse, getting her bag of tricks together, which you can't see. It's probably she's got it somewhere on the ground. And she's going out and she's looking at herself in the water. Now this, for me, is a card of self-love. So that's an interpretation that from all of the studying that I've done, I've added in the interpretation of self-love. So it portrays self-love to me, this refreshment and renewal of the spirit in going out to find herself. The high priestess, she doesn't have a veil in front of her, but she pretty much is the same. I mean, it's like going deep into yourself and finding the spiritual lessons that you need. Whenever somebody gets this card, when I do a reading for them, I say that your spirituality is up. You know, have you ever considered your spiritual life? No, I don't have one. Well, here it is. It's right there. And so she's looking into the crystal ball. She's looking into her unconscious, and I see this as a card of the unconscious in the night, Isis. And I do like the veils too. I do actually like Freda Harris's drawing in the Crowley deck of the High Priestess with her beautiful veils. That's a beautiful image. But we have enough veiled women, so I thought that we go without the veils this time around. So this is, I actually wrote about not only birthing a child, but birthing, like I said, birthing anything, birthing a book, birthing a song, writing a song, and birthing anything in your life, like you're birthing a new room, you know, a spirit room for you. And we're always birthing something. I kind of went out on a limb and did it so that this is a woman, the goddess of Africa. Her name is Mawu, and she gives birth on an elephant, which I thought was very cool. So, and she also has a snake hanging down. The myth of Mawu has a snake hanging down in the tree at the same time. The only thing I really added to this from the Empress card was the concept, the political concept of being a mother. Not only am I a feminist, but I'm an all-round political person. I've had trouble because of it. I've had trouble because of my feminism, and also because of being outspoken, and also for my politics, which are peace politics. I try to live them, and I'm also an environmentalist, and I try to live that as much as I can, too. I imagine a lot of you have all of those going on in your life, or bits and pieces of them, or some of them. But it's not easy a lot of times to be different. It's not easy to have ideas that no one has heard about, or that no one really wants to hear about because of the comfort that you get from for not changing. But for me, the way that I look at it, if you don't change, the universe will make sure you do. And there is a goddess called Eris, and she comes in and she's a goddess of chaos. And then Kali, of course, is the goddess of pulling the rug out from under you and making change happen. Like people say, oh, I got Kali card and my house burned down, or I got Kali card and something like this happened. And she awakens you at the same time, so it doesn't have to be a total disaster. It doesn't have to be a disaster at all. But it can be a happening that gets you to pay attention, really pay attention. So that's Mavu. Aphrodite. Aphrodite is a little bit more than the traditional lover's card. The traditional lover's card is about making choices, and many other things. Like I haven't really got the time to totally go into, talking so much about each card, but I have two cards. This card is two women, and this card is two beings. And so I've got sort of my bases covered so that anybody can use this deck. And this could be two men, or it could be a man and a woman. And this is two women. So that when you get the deck, you can take out one if you want. Or if you want to leave them both in and give yourself the double chance of getting the lover's card, which is kind of cheating. I didn't feel like there was any card in the traditional tarot that really addressed. Now, correct me if you come out with a card, do it, which really addressed passionate love, like passionate love, and I think that drives the human spirit completely. I mean, people move across the world. People will do anything for love, practically. I mean, some people will. So I wanted the lover's card to also address the aspect of passionate love. In this card, there's chakras. We didn't do all 7 chakras, but we did 3 are connected, and they're kind of swimming underwater, which is when you're in the state of love, you're kind of swimming in a reality that is not of this world. So we put them underwater, and this one is, I think, just really very passionate too. So that's the change that I have made in this tarot, in the lover's card. This one is using the witch card or the magician card. Basically, they're the same. Magician is about creating your own reality. It's making things happen. It's using the elements of air, earth, water, and fire, which appear on the table in front of the magician, but also appear either on her body. And the fire is underneath here. So I wanted to reclaim that word wit. The media and the patriarchal society, I must admit, I want to say the patriarchal society have done such a good job of frightening people with what a witch is. And a witch is always a woman, and she's always ugly, and she's always evil. And you see it everywhere. You see it on TV, you see it everywhere. And I know plenty of women who say they are witches, who are loving, wonderful, creative people. And so I wanted to reclaim that word. But it still scares people because the media job that's been done on women. And the word crone, too, that's another thing that I wanted to reclaim, was the word crone. Because crone is like, she's another ugly old woman. And that means that your older years can't be, when you're wise, they can't be seen in a good light. So the word hag was even worse, so I didn't put that in there. But in the myths, and everybody says, oh yeah, goddess is wonderful, but some of these words that I'm coming out with are right from goddess myth and goddess lore. And that's the word crone and the word hag. There is a hag in Germany. there's the word Hagazusa, which is an old, wise witch woman, Hagazusa. Now there's one village in Germany where during the Inquisition where they burned millions of women, burned them and stoned them and drowned them. There was not one woman left. I did my master's thesis in women's studies on the witch burnings. There was not one woman in the town left. A lot of them were healers, midwives, nurses, people who took care of other people, and they just rounded them all up and got rid of them. And so Germany has I did a lot of workshops in Germany, and I did rituals, and we would do rituals. My rituals usually go on for an hour and a half, and I did several rituals in Berlin, and the women had come there from all over Germany for this conference that I was at, and when they came in to do the rituals and they started doing their rituals, they were so touched. A lot of them were crying. They would start to cry because that part of them had been so cut off because of what happened in their country. And so it was wonderful. I felt privileged to be there because with everybody else feeling that way, I started crying too. It's like it was so touching to be there with them, and I felt privileged to be there with them, to see how they were reconnecting with their spiritual selves. All right, let me see what's the next one that I have going here. The Amazon and the Chariot. I just wanted to, it's about willpower and driving the chariot of life. And I want to throw in a little humor here, but a lot of people with number 7 as their life card ride motorcycles and either have horses or motorcycles. People that have the chariot card as their card. So each one of you has a life card. And maybe in another workshop I will, or somebody will show you how to work it out. Actually, it's in one of my books on how to work it out. But there's Mary Greer, my friend Mary Greer, has put out a whole book on it. But it was originally published in a book by Angeles Arian, who is known all over the world as a really wonderful tarot woman. And she has a book about life cards, and Mary learned from her and wrote another book called Tarot Constellations. I have a little clock, but that's not my clock. So basically, the chariot is pretty much driving the chariot of life, and it's about willpower and many other things that I haven't really made that much change to. I might say it in a different way, but basically it's the same as the traditional. Strength, personal power. This is something that I wrote about in The Last Magician. I don't know how many of you read of it. Any of you read it? I read about the strength card, which the lion I see as her passions and her personal power. And with a lot of the traditional decks, she's struggling, some of them more than others. Some of them have a quantitative difference in the amount of struggle that she's putting in with a lion. And I can't remember exactly the pictures, but there's 2 that are very similar to each other that are really different. But this, she's not struggling with her personal power. She's not struggling with her passions. She is walking in harmony with her power and her passions. And she's got her, instead of struggling with the jaws of the lion, she's got her hand on the head of the lion. And they're walking in peace. And she's walking peacefully with her power as she goes. It's also about your passions. And Crowley calls this card lust. Well, everybody says, okay, well, what's lust have to do with it? You know, what's lust have to do with the strength card? For me, they were talking about luster. It's a luster that you feel when you're totally in your personal power. You know how sometimes you feel just on top of the world and you feel like you're really in your power? And if somebody looks at you, other people are attracted to you and they come to you. And that's because you have a luster. You have a luster, the personal power of this card. So I put that all together, and I thought it fit together very well and made it the major thing of my strength card. The crone or the hermit. Are there any questions, or does anybody have any comments on any of this? Did anybody ever, while I was asking that, did anybody come up with a traditional card that really portrays passion? They don't look, it's not passionate. And the closest to passionate I could find was the heart with the swords in it, the broken heart. Well, I just thought maybe there was a deck that you could think about. One of the...
In the Calrose deck says lovers can't wear their embracing.
Uh-huh.
Well, the Portuguese got
Yeah. You did a workshop on the Goddess Tarot, right? And what is their lover card? Now this is the crone or the hermit card. What I would have liked is the rays to come out more into the rest of the... I'll have these out here, you can look at them. To have the rays from the wand come out into the drawing a little bit more. It's not much, whereas the hermit card, it's pretty much dark, and I like all the rays that are coming out. And I guess why I'm here and why I did this and why I have stuck with this for, I don't know, it's 40 years, 25 doing my deck, or maybe even 30. And before that, I was doing tarot for around 10 or 15 years. It's that I love it. I love the images. I love even the decks that I don't like. There's always some cards that I can find in almost any deck that I just really love, that really are otherworldly. I love the otherworldliness of the tarot, where it isn't mundane. It isn't like, even the ones about everyday existence are not mundane. So it brings you to a different place. The tarot brings you into another world, and it's a magical world to me. And whenever we can access that magical world, to me, that's worth everything. Because you get so bored with the mundane world, the magical world. If I didn't have them, it's funny because in Harry Potter, now Harry Potter calls people who don't go into the magical world at all, he calls them muggles. So there are a lot of people in the world that are muggles who do not journey into the magical realms, even of astrology, which is the least magical of them all. Tarot is, because it's got pictures, because it's got the pictures that you can look at. That's why I don't like the decks that have a few pictures, and then they have 1 to 10 of every suit. They have those all, let's put one cup in this one and 10 cups in this one and 5. It's just all cups. I like to see the pictures. I like the decks with all of the different varieties. So this deck took 10 years to create, and then it took me 5 years to paint them. I've gladly donated a lot of my life to this. I don't regret it a bit. I don't regret it a bit. I still have a lot to learn from the tarot, and have a lot to learn from the goddess and the tarot. At least it's there, and I'm open to learning. The magical world nourishes me. It helps me get through. It vitalizes me. So this is pretty much the same as the Hermit card. I've got the concept in there of learning to be alone. I wasn't alone until 1997. I was back to back with parents, with marriages, with children, with lovers, one after another. The longest I ever spent by myself was 2 or 3 months in between a relationship. And then finally, Crone said, I got you. You're going to come to me. So except for a 1-year relationship in 2000 that brought me over to Australia, I have been alone since 1997. And I kicked and screamed. But it was a lesson that I really hadn't learned. I hadn't learned how to. I have a client, and he says, I'm very uncomfortable alone. I said, are you never alone? He says, no, I'm very uncomfortable alone. I will not be alone if I'm alone. He says, an hour is really a long time for me to be alone. And for me, I live by myself, and I'm alone. I don't have a relationship. I have friends, but still, if I'm out and about too much, I want to come home and spend time. And that's the biggest change I can tell you that's happened to me, is learning about this card, learning about positive aloneness. The Spider Woman, I think somebody got the Spider Woman when we went around. The Spider Woman is the Wheel of Fortune, only instead of the regular wheel, she's got a spinning wheel. And she's got the rainbow web. This is a Hopi legend of the Native Americans, how she spins the rainbow web is a web that covers the entire world. And the web threads come down and they connect every human being, every plant, every animal, everything on the planet is connected by the rainbow web. And how you can act, and how they say that change is going to come big when the web is visible, or when the web materializes. Well, what have we got? We've got the World Wide Web. We do. And what's been happening in the world? You know, what happened in Indonesia? A lot of big changes, earth changes are happening. So this is, you know, about karma and about positive change. And I really didn't do a whole lot of different interpretations on this one. I just portrayed it differently with the spinning wheel. And the Hopis say, in order to connect with the goddess, or to connect with the universal spirit of everybody, that you have to open the top of your head and chant. And by opening the top of your head, then you will connect with the rest of the rainbow web. I didn't make this up. The Hopis wrote it. There's books on it. So I just wanted to tell you that one of the meditations I've done with large groups of people is having everybody hold hands and create the rainbow web among them and to connect with everybody. Because I believe that if people are connected, that there's nothing that we can't do together. And if there's nothing that's too bad that we can't sit down and talk it out, like nations sitting down and talking about what's wrong with their countries. Instead of bringing out the guns and just blowing everybody away, I don't believe that that's the new millennium, the way of the new millennium. I believe that if nations and people would sit down and talk with each other, and sit there as long as you have to, and pass the rattle back and forth if you need to, and take turns telling your side of the story, that we could all understand each other. And I think people are afraid of it. They're afraid to do that. So, I'm an old anti-war protester too. That was really fun. My friend got hit over the head with a grocery bag. Okay, Ma'at is the justice card. Ma'at's a goddess that goes way, way back. She goes back before Athena and before all of the Greek goddesses. There's an Egyptian goddess named Ma'at, and she has the eyes that see all in the hollowed halls of Ma'at. So I've got some information on her. She's got a scale in one hand, and the feather is ostrich feather, and when you die, Ma'at is there when you go through the crossroads to the other side. She helps you decide. She doesn't judge you, but she helps you decide what you've been like in this lifetime, what you're going to do in the next. So the heart of the person goes on one side of the scales, and the ostrich feather goes on the other side. And if they balance out, that means, hey, your heart's pretty light, you've done really well. But if the scales, tip up, then you know that you need to work on yourself, and then you choose the next lifetime that you're going into. So that's what Ma'at does. And I thought it was a pretty good way to interpret the Justice card. Here we come, the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man, I didn't like the fact that the Hanged Man was bound and hanging. Sacrifice, crucifixion, sometimes suffering of that kind of hanging. And also, I considered it mildly violent. So I I had a woman hanging over a tree branch. No violence in that, and it portrays the same thing. I don't know if I added any, it's like surrendering. It's like, I call this card letting go. It's one of the shorter terms that I give this card, letting go. And surrendering to, and listening. When you have, Vicki Noble in her Mother Peace book said, the goddess is knocking on your door. You need to stop and listen so that you can get the messages. And that's what I see her doing in the reversal card, is just letting go of everything and stopping and listening in your busy life. Focusing, stopping, surrendering. Surrendering to whatever. Let's see. The Phoenix and transformation. Now this is the old death card. I really dislike that old skeleton. With the scythe, didn't like the scythe either. And so this is focusing on the phoenix rising out of the ashes and rebirthing and transforming. So when something dies, then something new is always born anyway. It's like every breath we take, it's every moment that we live. One moment is dying and a new moment is being born. So that's why I had trouble with this drawing. This drawing was drawn at least 10 or 11 times, and it never looked like she was getting up off the ground. And it originally was a woman without her clothes on and rising up out of the flames. Well, I couldn't get the body right, and nobody could get the body right that looked like she was really lifting up. So I did draw some of it. I mean, I didn't leave it totally to other people, but I drew the gown. So Phoenix Firebird is rising from the ashes of destruction or the death. And so I focus more on rebirth with this card than on the death part. But when I'm reading, I do realize that something in the person's life is dying. Something is being reborn. So, temperance. Who totally really understands the temperance card? Part of writing the book that I wrote was to simplify the esoteric language that a lot of the tarot books are written in, that doesn't make the meaning of the card really understandable to a lot of people. That you have a good example of this is a thing that they have in Canada and the U.S. called the BOTA. It's called the Builders of the Addendum. Who's heard of it? Builders of the Addendum do tarot lessons, and they're heavy-duty tarot people, and it's a huge, huge, huge organization. And you pay your money and you send away, and they send you sheaf of papers of, like one card they might have 25 or 30 pages of writing. And, traditional cards, they teach the traditional cards. But you have to wade through all of these pages, and maybe sometimes I can remember reading, and I did it for all the major arcana cards. I can remember reading a whole page and not getting one thing out of it. It was all like esoteric talk. It was all talk, talk, talk. And so nothing, and then I would find a line or two here or there. And I actually got a lot of good knowledge out of it, but it was a good example of some of the tarot books that I feel like don't make any sense. I take the idea of the temperance card back to the tempering of a blade. Does everybody else do that, or does everybody else do that in interpreting this card? Blending of elements. Well, the tempering of a blade is using fire and water. So if you take a sword and you form a sword, say, and you go bang on rock, the sword will crumble. There'll be nothing left of it. But if you take the sword and you put it first in fire and you heat it up, and then you put it in water, and that's what the old smithies used to do, is they used to take the metals and make it, and then you put it in water, and then you could hit it on something, it won't break. And the temperance card is that kind of tempering, only tempering of the spirit. It's like putting pressure on you so that you are stronger, so that you learn, teaching you lessons so that you will turn out to be a wiser person and stronger. But it all goes, the word temperance all goes back to the tempering process of the blade. And I hadn't read that in any tarot books that I'd read. I had not read that. So I do talk about it, and I'm happy to bring that forward to people, because I think the tempering of the spirit is one of the big things that this card's about. So I wish I'd made an angel. I miss the angel, and my next one I'm going to have an angel. But at the time that I did this deck, angels, we got enough angels, and then the whole deck came out with the angel cards, and so then I got feeling like I think it was also a turning away from my Christian background of the angels. I was brought up in a Christian family where my uncle was a minister. So I was inundated with church and a Christian religion, and when I decided that I didn't believe in it anymore, and that it was Protestant, it was ultimately boring to me, very, very boring. I think that's why I kind of threw the angels out. Temperance card, the oppression card, this is the devil card. This is the Christian concept of the concept of the devil card is a Christian interpretation that they put on the god Pan, and I'm going to read it. I have designated positive male meanings to the card Pan, and meanings such as bondage, machismo, and self-destruction to the oppression card. This crucial change is a radical break from tarot tradition. When patriarchal religious groups took over Pan, who was also called the horned god, because he was this sexy guy that used to trip around the hills and play a flute, right? So the Christians took Pan, and he was converted into the antithesis, an enemy of the Christian male god, and became the devil as the triple goddess toppled from human reverence. With characteristic lack of imagination, the patriarchs just reversed the goddess values and invented sin, evil, guilt, confession, and pain worship, which was martyrdom. Used penance to justify suffering, glorified death through crucifixion, and created an all-male heaven to support the all-male caste in power on earth. From the feminist book of Lights and Shadows by Z. Budapest, who is my goddess mother who ordained me as a priestess. And she's a real radical woman, and she writes great books, and that was from the book. So I didn't want the devil in there at all, because the devil has never meant good things. So I wanted to portray the oppression like I felt like it was. The oppression of the women's cottages being burned, and this woman is being stoned. Now, I ask my clients, I say, do you feel like there's anything in your environment that's really oppressing you? Like, first of all, I ask if it's from without. And a lot of times it is from without. Oh, I'm in a terrible work situation. I'm being really oppressed by this person who hates me, blah, 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 blah. Some people say, no, I don't feel like I'm oppressed, really oppressed in that way in my life. And so I interpret also this card meaning internalized oppression. The internalized oppression that we talk about in psychology, the oppression of being told that you're stupid when you're 10 years old, and you grow up thinking you're stupid, and you finally, maybe when you're 30, maybe you recognize that I might not be so stupid, but there might have been somebody in your family, your mother or father, or somebody that told you that you were bad or stupid on an ongoing basis, and you really believe it. That's internalized oppression. And when I say that to the clients, they go, yes, there is something about that in my life. It's that I thought this about myself. And so then once it's out in the light of day, then you can change it. You can work on it, you can go do whatever you do to change consciousness with yourself and change that. Work on your own self-esteem, but until it comes out. So I find this card very useful in that way also. I don't like the old devil card. Of all the tarot cards, I don't like the devil card at all. Because it took Penn, who was this really fun guy, you know, and made him into this bad guy. And I have a Penn card, which is my new card that I introduced to the tarot. And it's the positive male card. And it talks a lot about how men can change and the things that they can do to change, and how more and more of these kind of men are appearing. Like your husband. I've known you for a while, and we've gone and done stuff and everything, but I never met her husband. And I went up to her house and I met her husband. What a jolly guy he is. And I thought, wow, that's wonderful, because there's another male that I'm meeting in the world that I really like, you know? So it's the Pan card. So this is a new card. Because we had taken out a lot of, we took out the Emperor because he was like head of the family and the boss, you know? So we took him out and gave his attributes to the Empress, who was head of the family. We took out the huh?
Did you take out the Pope?
Yeah, we took out the Hierophant and gave the qualities of the Hierophant to the priestess. And the Hierophant also had other qualities of being a channeler, but she can also be a channeler. So I put them back in my new deck. But this was a deck for women mostly, and the power authorities, we just felt like at that time we didn't want them. We didn't want the power authorities there. We wanted the women to be the power authorities for a while, and just to balance things out, just to get things back on kilter a little bit. So when you're a raging feminist, then you do things like that. And so, but we still knew men in our lives that were positive males. So we put this card in for them. Believe it or not, men use this deck. They do. A lot of men who want to know about the goddess and want to know about women and want to change, they want this deck because it's a guide mark for them. And some of my best, you know how the people write you letters and say, oh, I love your deck, I love you, it's wonderful, blah, blah, blah. Now more men are writing me than women. So that's heartening. We're almost done, folks. We all got a few here to go. Another new card is the Coyote, the trickster, the sacred trickster. And I have a little tiny bit to read on the Coyote, just to give you an idea of what it's about. Coyote woman. Coyote is an archetype that embraces the Joker and the Fool card in tarot. She has a special magic and wisdom all her own. Whoop, am I holding her up right? Trust, play, and having fun are her most magnificent qualities. Coyote's medicine works in hidden ways, and she warns us of undue seriousness or complicating what is simple. The card renews our childlike innocence and reminds us to play and keep our precious sense of humor. That is why it is said that all true teachers have great senses of humor. So I just wanted to read a little bit, since it is also a new card. And so these are two of the 6 that don't correlate with, well, this is sort of like, my Pan card is also sort of like the Fool, you know? I think he looks like the Fool too. Whereas he doesn't have a bag, but he has his flute. All right, Kali the Tower. The Tower, Kali is known in India. She wears usually corpses around her waist, and she's known as the Destroyer. But she's also known as the Awakener. And she destroys only that which you need destroyed. She doesn't destroy that which you really need to keep. She might burn your house down, but you know there was nothing in it that you really, really needed. She pulls the rug out from under you, and things change really dramatically when Kali energy is around. The traditional tarot talks about the tower as being the structures that we build around us. And Kali, or the way that people are falling from the tower, when you think of the tower card, you see people, you know, falling out the windows, and part of it's burning, and, you know, it's really chaos. Well, she destroys these with her lightning bolts, which are the lightning bolts of understanding. So Kali's lightning bolts will, they're coming out of her hands, out of her four hands. And also, Kali is sometimes seen with many, many arms and hands, not just the few that we have. We just didn't want to draw anymore. It would have taken up the whole thing. So she's the awakener. She awakens you to new reality. So when you have the rug pulled out from under you, you also can look forward to being awakened. And it's sort of like Uranus. Anybody astrologer? The Uranus energy. This is Uranus energy. That's why I think that it should go along with this card. Now, my astrological ideas about what I think all of these cards are, I think probably really totally different than, I cannot see the Cancer card, which is what they give to the Chariot. I can't really see that. There's a lot of it, being an astrologer also, I just can't put it together. So I just had to work with my own. And I usually don't talk about it too much because my ideas are so different. The star, the moon. Oh yes, the moon card. This is known as the woman's card, right? The moon is always associated with women. And it's in the tarot, it's like made into this kind of, oh, the dogs are braying and it's really weird. You know, a lot of weird stuff associated with the card that is our card, that is the woman's card. So I don't have the dogs, I just have this woman flying to the moon, and I've made it into more positive woman's card. Of course, my deck is all for women, but I talk about there being the transpersonal and collective unconscious of this card, where it's a card of magic. And I think there's a couple other decks that have started to talk about the moon card in that way too. Also, the fact that we bleed, or I did. Younger women haven't gone through menopause, they bleed with the tides and the magnetic pull of the moon, and that we're really all connected to the moon. That's why I am a daughter of the moon. So that's my favorite element in the whole world, is being out under the moon. How many of you take moon baths? I used to have a house that I had a whole thing I could lay down on, and the full moon would shine down, and every full moon my friends would come. A lot of times we'd have a big ritual, and everybody'd go home, and we'd stay, and we'd lay and have the moon rays just go into us. And I think it's very healing to do. Haven't done it in a while. She's a goddess of magic in the night. The star card, I put her up in the air. I figure the star should be up in the air. It shouldn't be on the ground. Pouring the water. And I have a poem to read, and I was going to read it at the end, but I'll read it now. It's almost the end of this workshop, 39. Pina Mountain Water did this poem. It's called The Star. Gently truth will touch you when she comes. No loud fanfare blares her forth, but in the deepest space of silence, angel silver calls, embrace the earth. Now I lie beneath her loving gaze, and I, the open lake, receive her cup. Now I float within her gentle heart, and I, the open earth, am filled with hope. And that's what the star card's about anyway, is hope and faith, and having things start on the positive journey of the last few cards of the major arcana. The sun card, clarity, trust, optimism, restoring faith in your purpose. And I call it Amaterasu because it's from the Shinto religion in Japan. And in Japan, there are still temples to Amaterasu, and she is worshipped with mirrors. So the priestesses of the Shinto religion dress up in their Japanese outfits, and they do their dances and their rituals with mirrors in the Shinto temples, and that still goes on in Japan. And so Amaterasu is a very well-known sun goddess. Of all the sun goddesses, I liked her the best. So now, two more cards. This one is very easy. It's ecstatic dance of life, completion of a cycle, becoming whole, the eggs of the new cycle beginning, because the cycle of the tarot goes around and around and around, and there's never really an end, although it's a completion. The Shakti, or the world card, is the completion. It's never the end. It's also the card of opening the heart, and that's why the green, because it's the heart chakra. So the Kundalini energy is the energy that runs up and down your spine, that gives you the ecstatic dance. So the ecstatic dance of life is being all together in all ways, and we all have those moments or those days or those weeks when everything is just wonderful, and you're outside and you look at the trees and you look at the people and everybody's beautiful and everything's wonderful, right? That's Shakti at work, or the world card at work. This one I have a little bit more to say about, the judgment card. Some of it called the last judgment. Call for the dead to rise. Implication of consequences in the karma of this card. I like to think of it as a summing up before the end of the cycle, before this card, which is the end of the cycle, a summing up, and also a transformation. This is the body of the earth. I don't know if any of you have noticed that it's a woman's body that the women are dancing on. They're dancing on her belly. It's a celebration because, to me, the last judgment card is when it's like, it's a rite of passage. So when you, say for a young woman begins her bloods, or you be married, or you fall in love, you find the love of your life, or you become 50 years old, or whenever, there's celebrations. And I call this a celebration card because I believe that it's an awakening in some way and a rite of passage. So I think of it as a little differently than the traditional card. I didn't like the ghosts coming out of the coffins. It just, I thought that was. So if you're doing a tarot deck and you don't like something, you change it. As long as the energy, as far as I'm concerned, as long as the energy is still there, as long as you can write something in your book that gives the person, that's reading it, the idea of what the card is about and connects to the traditional meanings on a level that, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a word, and the word, the essence. As long as you have the essence of the tarot card. That's why people change them and make them whatever. I mean, every tarot deck is different, People that are into this kind of thing, they'll do their whole tarot deck like that. The Native American tarot is all about Native Americans. This is goddess. Basically, I think that it's all the same knowledge, just presented in a different way. Other major changes, I do not call the one, the aces, the ace of cups, the ace, I don't call them aces. It reminds me of Las Vegas and gambling. I changed it to ones, the one of this, the one of that. They're gifts to me. They're things that you are given. So if you get a one card, you're given the gift of, if it's a cup, you're given the gift of emotions. You're given the gift of love. If it's a Pentacles card and somebody got it here today, it's given the gift of money, the gift of a healthy body, or the gift of a great job. So if you get the ones, then that's what I think. It's an outpouring of energy too. I've already talked about fives. They're the disrupted energy, and then the tens of each suit are completion of that cycle. So I just wanted to throw that in. I have a workshop on the minors, and I teach people that each card in the minors can go across all of the different suits and mean the same thing. So all you got to do is remember the element and remember the one phrase, and you can just adapt it to each of the suits. Oh, I have talked a lot. And I have a tape that's called The Phoenix, and while if you want to listen to it, I'm going to put it on and we can go, and Linda can thank you, and then we can have something to eat.
Yeah, well, actually, Natasha, could you do the thing?
I got words. Thanks, Fiona.
Oh, I thought you were going to thank everybody.
That was a fantastic presentation, and gave us some insight into your wonderful deck, and I love it. I think it's
I hope even those people who are into the traditional tarot have a better understanding of that deck, whatever they're using.
It's given the traditional tarot more meaning.
Huh?
It's given the traditional tarot more meaning.
It has?
I'm using it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
What is it?
For a raffle
Oh, yeah.
for the prize. And what's the prize?
E88. Did you know that number 8 is the card of money?